It hurts. Let's try again tonight.
It hurts, let's try again tonight, the virgin bride. Whispered, but when the rancher spent hours. The lamp burned low in the ranch house bedroom, its amber light trembling along the log walls and catching on the iron nails. Like small, uncertain stars. Outside the prairie breathed, grass whispering under the wind's steady comb, the distant lowing of cattle settling for the night. The house itself seemed to listen. She sat on the edge of the bed, nightdress pooled around her knees, toes barely touching the braided rug. Her hands were folded, tight in her lap as if holding something precious and fragile at once. The wedding felt both finished and unfinished. A ribbon tied and still trailing, the echo of vows lingering in her ears like a song she didn't yet know how to sing. He stood near the door at first, hat set aside, boots placed neatly where they always went. He moved with care, as though the room were a skittish animal that might bolt if startled. Years of open spaces had taught him to read small signs, the way a horse's ear flicked, the way weather shifted before a storm, and he read her now with the same attention. Her shoulders were tight. Her breath was shallow. He crossed the room slowly and stopped, giving her space, waiting for her eyes to meet his. She looked up, then away again, heat blooming in her cheeks. The words came out thin, almost lost to the lamplight. It hurts, she whispered. She swallowed, steadying herself. Let's try again tonight. The sentence hung between them, delicate as frost on a fence wire. He didn't move right away. He let the quiet do its work, let her know he had heard every syllable. When he knelt in front of her instead of reaching for her, it surprised her. The floor creaked softly beneath his weight. He rested his forearms on his thighs so their faces were level, so she wouldn't feel looked down upon or cornered. His eyes were kind and serious, the color of river stones after rain. We don't have to, he said gently. Not tonight, not ever. I meant what I said to the preacher, about care and patience. He took her hands, warm and steady, his thumbs brushing slow circles over her knuckles. We can take all the time there is. Relief loosened something in her chest, and she hadn't realized how tight it had been until that moment. Tears pricked at her eyes. She shook her head, not in refusal but in resolve. I want to, she said, stronger now. I just slower, please. He nodded once, a promise sealed without flourish. Slower, he echoed. He leaned his forehead to her knuckles, grounding them both, breathing in the faint scent of soap and hay that clung to her hair. For a while, that was all there was. The hum of the lamp, the wind outside, the quiet certainty of his presence. They shifted together, carefully as if learning a dance step by step. He sat beside her on the bed, leaving space between them until she closed it herself. He talked, not to distract, but to anchor, about the creek that ran high in spring and cut a new line through the pasture, about the old mare who trusted no one but him and how long it had taken to earn that trust. His voice was low and even, and she found herself breathing in time with it, her shoulders easing with every story. When he finally reached for her, it was after asking with his eyes and waiting for her nod. His touch was light, respectful, as though he were handling something easily bruised. The kiss he gave her was slow and lingering, a question more than a claim. She answered it by leaning closer, by letting her hand rest against his chest and feeling the steady drum there. The lamp flickered, then steadied. The night deepened without pressing in. There were moments when she tensed again, when the memory of discomfort fluttered back like a startled bird. Each time he noticed. Each time he paused. He whispered reassurance, counted breaths with her, reminded her that nothing was owed, that nothing would be taken. The care he showed wasn't loud or dramatic. It was patient, made of small choices and attention, time-stretched, elastic, and forgiving. She surprised herself by laughing once, a soft, embarrassed sound when the bed creaked unexpectedly. He smiled then, not teasing, just warm, and the tension loosened further. They lay side by side for a while, simply listening to the house settle. He brushed a stray curl from her forehead and told her she was brave, though he said it like a fact rather than a compliment. She tucked the word away, letting it take root. When the lamp finally dimmed and the shadows grew long, they didn't rush to banish them. They let the night be what it was, wide and patient, like the land beyond the windows. She rested her head against his shoulder, feeling the solid reassurance of him there, and he adjusted so she was comfortable, as if that were the most natural thing in the world. Outside, a coyote called, answered by another farther off. Inside, the quiet held, The pain she'd feared didn't vanish all at once, but it softened, edged by trust. They moved forward only when she led, only as far as she wished. When they stopped, it was not because of fear, but because they chose rest. Because they understood there was no finish line to cross, only a path to walk together. Later, as the lamp guttered and the room sank into shadow, she realized something had shifted. Not everything, not all at once, but enough. She felt seen. She felt safe. He kissed her hair, a simple gesture filled with gratitude, and whispered goodnight as if sealing the day rather than ending it. The prairie breathed on. The ranch house kept its watch, and in the quiet between them, patience became a kind of promise, strong enough to hold whatever tomorrow might ask. Morning came quietly, the way it often did on the ranch, slipping through. The thin curtains before either of them was ready to admit the night had passed. Pale sunlight traced a line across the floor and climbed the bedpost, warming the edge of the quilt. She woke to the steady rise and fall beneath her cheek and, for a suspended moment, didn't know where she was. Then the memory returned, not as a rush but as a gentle unfolding. The wedding, the careful night, the patience, the promise that had not been spoken loudly but proven. She shifted slightly, testing the space, and felt his arm tighten instinctively around her, protective even in sleep. His hand rested warm at her side, not possessive, simply there. The simple fact of it calmed her. She listened to his breathing, deep and even, and let herself stay still, letting the morning arrive at its own pace. When he woke, it was gradual. A breath changed. His fingers moved, brushing the fabric of her nightdress as if confirming she was real. His eyes opened and softened when they found her watching him. There was no awkwardness, no sudden need for words. He smiled the way people do when they're grateful but don't quite know how to say it. "You all right?" he asked quietly, voice rough with sleep. She nodded, surprised by how true it felt. "I am," she said. After a moment she added, "I really am." They lay there longer than necessary, the ranch waiting patiently beyond the walls. Eventually the day insisted. He rose first, pulling on his shirt and trousers, moving with the same unhurried care he'd shown the night before. She watched him, noting the familiarity of his motions, the ease with which he existed in this space. It struck her then that this house, this life, was no longer something she was stepping into alone. It was something they were shaping together. Downstairs the kettle went on, the smell of coffee filling the kitchen. She joined him, hair still loose, wrapped in a shawl against the morning chill. They worked side by side, occasionally brushing shoulders, exchanging small smiles that felt like private jokes. Nothing extraordinary happened, and that somehow made it extraordinary. The world hadn't shifted on its axis, but something within her had found its balance. The day passed in useful tasks. She followed him out to the barn, watching as he checked fences and tended the animals. He explained things without condescension, showing her how to carry grain without spilling it, how to read a horse's mood by the tension in its neck. When she hesitated, he waited. When she tried, he encouraged. The sun climbed, then began its slow descent, and she realized she was no longer counting hours or bracing herself for what came next. Evening returned gently, bringing cooler air and long shadows across the fields. Supper was simple, stew and bread, but they ate it like a shared accomplishment. When the dishes were done and the last of the light faded from the windows, a quiet awareness settled between them. Not fear this time, but anticipation tempered by trust. Upstairs, the bedroom felt different. Familiar now. Safer. She closed the door behind them and turned, meeting his eyes. Her heart beat faster, but it wasn't the frantic flutter of before. It was steadier, stronger. She stepped closer, closing the space on her own terms. "Tonight," she said softly, voice sure, "I'm ready." He didn't rush toward her. He didn't hide his relief either. He nodded once, solemn as a vow, as if the words mattered because she had chosen them. "We'll go at your pace," he said. "Always." They undressed slowly, not with ceremony but with attention. Every movement was deliberate, every pause respected. When his hands found her, they were warm and familiar now, no longer strangers. She noticed how he watched her face, not her body, gauging every breath, every small change. When she guided him closer, he followed. When she needed a moment, he waited. Time lost its sharp edges. Hours seemed to stretch and soften, measured not by the clock but by heartbeats and whispered reassurances. There were moments of uncertainty, of brief discomfort, but they passed differently now, held by patience, eased by trust. She discovered that courage could live alongside vulnerability, that one did not erase the other. When it was done, when the intensity faded into something quieter and deeper, she rested her head against his chest. His heart was racing now as if catching up to hers. He exhaled slowly, one hand tracing gentle patterns along her back, grounding them both. "You did great," he murmured, not as praise but as acknowledgement. "So did you," she replied, and meant it. They lay tangled in the sheets, the lamp extinguished, the room lit only by moonlight spilling through the window. Outside, the prairie stretched endlessly under the stars, indifferent and eternal. Inside, something equally vast had taken root, not loud or dramatic but steady. A sense of belonging, of choosing and being chosen. As sleep crept in, she realized that the pain she had feared no longer defined the night. What remained was connection, built carefully, honestly. He kissed her temple, slow and reverent, and pulled the quilt higher around them. Tomorrow would bring work, challenges, misunderstandings perhaps. Life on the ranch was not a storybook. But tonight, wrapped in quiet and trust, she felt ready for all of it. The night held them patient and wide, and in its shelter their marriage began, not with urgency, but with understanding.